Welcome to our next conversation. And this one is really focused around why are we using certain metrics to measure success and why are we talking about it a certain way? And why does Business Barracks have graduates, right? You're graduating if you have this. And so the two are A, profit, and B, living wage, right? And so, Emile, where does that come from? Why are these criteria behind the success and how we're measuring what we're doing?
Yay, one of my favorite topics, Antoine. Thanks for asking me first. I wouldn't have been able to hold my tongue if anyone else started talking. Well, I have this podcast. All the question is what about the profit? I've met so many entrepreneurs and so-called business people. Sorry, I use so-called because they're not making any money, right? And I classify businesses in three things. There's a hobbyist. As you know, when you have a hobby, you do something out of your love, it costs you money. Well, there's a classification of people who think they're in business that are hobbyists, where they're not making any money. Their business is costing them money, right? Then there's the self-employed person who makes money, but the minute they stop working, their business is over. And what I like to get people to is the true business owner. A business owner is someone who's generating revenue in their absence, whether they're there or not. They've built a business that makes money, that makes profit. So, what is profit, right? And if you're an accountant or bookkeeper, the international equation for profit is revenue minus expenses equal profit. And we can't disagree. That's what you're taught. Unfortunately, as a business owner, you cannot follow that equation. You have to change it to expenses plus profit equals revenue. You have to think of profit as an expense. If you don't budget for profit, you're not going to make it, right? Then it comes down to, well, what is profit? So people say, well, if I buy something, for $1 and I sell it for $2, I made $1 profit. Well, you made $1 on your job cost profit, but your gross profit, you forgot to include all your expenses like your overhead, your insurance, your rent, things that are not part of the performing the job is called overhead. And so then they do all that and they go, okay, I covered all that. I still have profit. And then I go, but did you pay yourself? Well, no, that's my profit is my pay. No. If your profit is your pay, you may just be self-employed and you're just making enough to live, but you cannot duplicate it, right? You have to treat your salary as an expense, because if you ever want to scale and bring on other people to do your job and all you make is enough job profit to cover one salary and now you brought someone else in, well, now you're not getting anything. You're just giving that money to someone else. So to truly calculate profit, your salary has to be a cost. It has to be an expense, and then profit is what's left over after everything else. But if you don't budget for it, and this is a big thing, if you don't make an expense, if you don't say, okay, my overhead is this, my job costs are this, my labor, whatever it is, and then my salary as an owner, as a manager, as a CEO, whatever position is also an expense. And then I need to make more so the company is profitable so that we can grow and scale and add new things and new programs, that you have to budget in your pricing. So if you're not pricing enough to cover your overhead, to cover your product and service, to cover your salary, and to cover extra profit, then either you're in the wrong business or you got to change your pricing model. And understanding that is so important. I learned early on that if someone says, how much money did you make? Before you even done the job, if you don't know, you don't know your numbers, right? You watch Shark Tank and Dragon's Den, and then they say, do you know your numbers? They want to know how much money you're going to make. And the only way to know that is if you've budgeted for profit, if you've budgeted for everything and you know what everything costs and put money in there, right? So, people come to me and say, hey, I just made $10,000. Really? What'd you do? Well, I sold a contract for $10,000. Okay, so you sold 10,000, you didn't make 10,000. How much of that is profit? I don't know. We'll find out at the end of the month. That's the wrong way to do it. You should know, if I just sold $10,000, I'm walking away with 4,000 profit. Before you even collected and started the job, you should know that. And, that's all part of understanding the difference between profit and non-profit.
Yeah. Yeah. How about yourself, John? Where did profitable business, living decent wage? Why are we talking about that as the criteria for graduating?
I think that the other conversation that goes into that, which is super important, is for the people that are coming through business barracks to be sensible and realistic with what that actually means for them. Because there's some people who are comfortable. It's like, you know what? I need to be paid $50,000 a year and I'm happy. And there are others it's like, no, I need 70K. And others, I need 130K to be able to do what I need to do. And that is part of that conversation. So what Emile just said is really, really important because you need to actually know how much money is coming out of that business and where it's going to go. But if you're getting paid, you need to know how much you need to get paid in order to determine how much you need to push, how many contracts you need to have every month, how much sales need to come in order for you to cover those things. But that's really, really important. And me as a single person versus me as a somebody with a single partner or somebody with 5 kids or 5 kids and 7 dogs, what I need to be able to live on is very different. So the way that I push and the way like that is really, really important. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs don't always remember that.
See, I like what you're saying. I'd like to add to that, if you may,
Mhm.
in terms of I think there's two things that we need to understand is what do I need to keep the lights on? So, what are my minimum payments for all my loans and what do I need to so that I don't lose my house? That's a minimum. That's the minimum I need to pay myself. Then there's what do I think I'm worth? And now it's like, well, I have two masters, and I've invested $170,000 because I went to the US to be able to do this, right? And now all of a sudden I'm worth 225,000. So there's the what do I need as a minimum? What am I worth? And I think part of the conversation is what's a decent, right? Because yeah, we can help you get 225, but if you're only selling for 30K right now, and you want to get to 225 as a salary and still have profit, well, you're now selling for at least 300. So now you're 10xing your business. Can it be done? Definitely. But that's a a very different kind of course that you're taking. And I think part of what we're having is a conversation, which to me was kind of we're going to give you a half decent wage,
Mhm.
right? We're going to make sure that that's what we're going to guarantee. Do we want you to be poor? No. Right? None of us started being an entrepreneur to be poor because, by the way, if that's what we wanted, we would have started a not for profit or a charity and we would have given our money away. That's not what we're starting, right? We want you to be able to have extra money so that you can continue to improve, to continue to learn, to be able to reinvest, to be able to maintain what you're doing. That's that profit piece. You still have to be able to live. And I agree with Emile, right? Part of it is you don't have profit unless you've paid yourself what you think. Now, the challenge that I've seen is that I've seen companies go, "Hey, I'm super profitable," and I asked them how much did they pay themselves this year. Right? They had $100,000 in profit. Great. How much did you pay yourself? $10,000. How much do you really need to live? 70. Oh, okay. So you're only $40,000 of profit. And they're like, well, actually, I'm pulling 125 out of my business, even though I left. So now, oh, that means you're leaving you're going to actually create a deficit of 15K after you've done all of this? Oh, that's not really profit. And that's why the profit piece, and I say this to any investor, always talk about revenue, don't talk about profit. If you're going to invest into a business, because profit is all subjective. One year I can pay myself 30K and have tons of profit. The next year I could pay myself 130K and have a loss. And so part of it is why we talk about a certain level of salary and still having money left over, right? So what we're doing is we're helping you build something that is reasonable in your industry. That doesn't mean you can't outshine it. It doesn't mean we're not going to help you do more. But as a graduate, you're going to get a half decent wage, right, with where you're at in the industry, and you're still going to have extra money. Now, I know that most entrepreneurs don't want to do just okay. We don't get into business just to do okay, and for sure we're going to help you thrive for that. I think that's our objective. And like Emile was talking about, and John, you're talking about, what do we actually want? What do we think we're worth? That's fantastic. I think that's the conversation. But now you hear how you're driving your business and you're setting your business metrics are going to be very different when we talk about what you're worth, how much you're paying yourself, and actually leaving money at the end of that. So if you're a service-based business that has very little overhead, then you might only have 30% worth of expenses. So for every $1,000, right, there's $700 that could be left for your salary. You leave $50 for profit, 650 is now your salary. And then you have 300 that's expense. But if you're a construction company, depending what cohort you're going through, you may have very high overhead. And so if you're somebody who's using proprietary software, like some of my businesses, well, I have licensing fees that I need to pay, right? So those are, like it or not, I have to cover those if I want to be functional, right? And so every business has different things. Even though I'm a service-based business, I have licensing fees, so I have recurring expenses that come out. That if I don't do this, I can't deliver. And I think that's where at least for me, the conversation comes about is that we're helping people not just look at how do I create something that, like Emile says, I'm going to buy something for $1, I'm going to sell it for 4, I'm going to pay myself 1, 2's for expenses. Hey, and you're going, yeah, but can you really, you want to make 60,000? Can you sell 60,000 units this year? If you're going to pay yourself $1. Oh, and by the way, that doesn't include your benefits or your taxes, right? So if you want benefits, add another 40%. So now you're selling for 85,000. So can you sell 85? So it's super simple. So buy something for $1, sell it for 4. You pay yourself one of those 4. Okay, good. Now the question is, can you sell 85,000 units? Which is why I never went into retail, by the way, right? Because I'm like, oh my god, how do you do that sheer like that? And so, right? So some people are like, totally, I can see how I can move that volume, right? And I love that in people, which is why I think there's 3 of us too. Because I look at it, I understand the theory behind it with the sheer moving, right? And so part of it is understanding when you start looking at it.
Mhm.
And I think that's why we talk about it that way. That's why the criteria for a graduation is that way. Not about, I don't care how much theory you've gotten. If you can't put it into practice and actually get those results, you're not graduating.
Yeah, well put. It starts with the awareness. With every program and change in life, you first have to be aware of your situation and where you're going, right? So understanding profit, you have to understand how it's calculated, but you also have to know, and everyone's different, is what is your salary? What do you want to make? And like there's a formula. Like you said, you have your cost, you have your overhead, which includes your salary, and then there's got to be profit. So when we know all those expenses, now we have to calculate how much revenue and sales have to be to match that. At what point are you at break even and you're profitable? And then you can scale from there. So I can teach the formula, but what I need to know first is what is your salary? What are you comfortable with? Now, if you say, hey, I want to, sell gumball machines, or have a vending system with 2 gumball machines selling gum at 25 cents, and I want to make $1 million a year salary, well, that's a lot of gum you have to sell. So there's a formula for everything, but whether it's practical or real, that's what we got to work. But we can show you how to do it. But obviously, understanding what profit is, understanding that your salary is not profit, is a key step.
Mm, yep. John, further thoughts?
I'm liking where
No?
this is going, so I'm just smiling and going. But once my glasses are like this, I'm in thinking mode, so this is fun.
I love it. I love it. Well, I think what I'm hearing in terms of we're trying to do it this way because it's an important factor when you're looking at being in a business owner, right? So you can start a business and have all the right theory, but if you can't make enough to be able to, and if your objective is instead of watching Netflix, right? I'm going to start this, and if it get because I've had entrepreneurs that I've worked with. I
Mm-hmm.
always give the example of this one photographer. He had a waiting list of 3 years,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you're like, oh, I should be a photographer in Ottawa. Because, oh my God, there are wedding photographers that have waiting lists for 3 years. And you actually ask him, he only does 4 weddings a year. Why? Because he has a full time job. And the reason he was doing weddings was because he didn't want his hobby, photography, to cost him cost him money. He wanted to buy new
Mhm.
lenses. He wanted to take new courses. He wanted to do travel around it. So his deal was, I'm going to lose 8 weekends a year, four for the engagement, four for the weddings, so that, the balance of that, the other 44 weeks, I get to do my hobby.
Mhm.
So he was like, why would I take on more? That's not the purpose of my business. And I was like, okay, like Emile said, that's a great hobby business. He had a
Mhm.
full-time job. He's doing this to cover his hobby. And so never wanted to grow. Everybody was like, well, why would you have a 3-year waiting list? Part of it is understanding, what does that mean? What are you trying to get out of it? We're going to have those conversations. Now, we're looking for people who want to live off their business.
Yeah.
Those are the participants of the business barracks.
And not only that, Antoine, like that guy had a clear understanding of what he was doing with his business. I have people that come to me that do $3 million in sales and they're $500,000 in debt. They don't know why. So let's look at how you're making profit. Let's look at how you're doing your numbers. I have people who do 600,000 a year in sales and they're keeping 350,000 of it, right? It's not the volume, and that's what people think. Oh, I'm not making enough money, I got to sell more. But do you know how much are you selling at the right price? Are you budgeting for profit? And it's many business owners, and I'm just going to make up over 80% because of the 80/20 rule, but probably more, have no idea if they're making profit or not. They just wait to the end of every month and they look in their bank account. Oh, I'm still in the deficit. Let's go do more sales. But they have no clue if they're making money or not because they just don't understand it. And that's the key component, is understanding what profit is, understanding how to make profit, and then calculate your sales and what you need to do afterwards. And it's different for everyone, but we got to get to that
Mhm.
understanding first.
Yep. And I think that's why it's one of our criteria, right? I think that's why it's a foundation. That's why we have it as a success.
Absolutely.
Well, on that, hopefully that helps you guys understand a little bit more about why we're doing this, where does it come from, why it's so important for us. And by the way, as you participate through your different cohort, why it's going to be one of those principal elements that's going to come through, and you're going to hear us talk about it. So that's why it's part of, at the forefront, one of our criteria. So thank you, gentlemen. Look forward to our next conversations.
Thank you.
Soon.